people, politics, and power. I am Imoni Amarere. Well, New Year wishes are still in order at this time for those who are watching the program for the first time in the year 2021. Well, from here, we wish you the very best. Our focus on the program today will be on governance priorities for Nigeria in the year 2021 and the expectations of the citizens. But of course, we cannot touch slightly on democratic developments across the world. Happenings in neighboring Ghana, known for its peaceful democratic transition of power on the African continent, and in the United States, which is held up in many circles as the gold standard for democratic ideas, have left many in shock and nonplussed. In Ghana, a scuffle broke out in parliament as voting was underway to elect a new leadership following the December 7 elections, and just before the inauguration of the Ghanaian president Nana Akufo-Addo for a second term in office. His victory at the polls is being challenged in the court by the opposition National Democratic Congress (NDC), which insists that the election was flawed and that no candidate met the constitutional threshold of 50% plus one to be declared winner. The NDC alleges that Akufo-Addo was fraudulently declared winner of the December 7 election. And now images from the breach of the United States Congress, the Capitol Hill, shocked the world as Trump's supporters temporarily halted the certification of the electoral college results of President-elect Joe Biden. The city on the hill, as it is fondly referred to, came under attack for the first time in over 200 years, and even more, by a mob motivated by President Donald Trump himself, who believed that the November election was rigged. Calls have begun to emerge for President Donald Trump to be removed from office with less than 13 days to the end of his tenure. But he has moved fast, as it were, by asking all political appointees and ambassadors to resign on January 20th. We shall, even for a little while, review the lessons to be learned for the advancement of democracy in Nigeria. And after that, we shall zero in on governance priorities and citizens' expectations in 2021. The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has said that President Muhammadu Buhari and his vice, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, and other top government personalities and functionaries will receive COVID-19 vaccines publicly to assure the populace of its safety. This is in response to fears being circulated in various quarters that the vaccines are harmful. The question, however, is what measures are being put in place to ensure an effective vaccine rollout across the country. And how can the rampaging second wave, made worse by the new and highly transmissible strain of the virus, be halted without reverting to another lockdown like other nations are currently doing? Nigeria is to receive 12 Super Tucano jets that were ordered from the United States this year. With the war against insurgency and banditry still ongoing, and the nation's security architecture well overstretched, what are the solutions to ensure that the nation is peaceful and secure? And now, of course, the big elephant in the room is the economy. The recent controversy over electricity tariff, the hike in electricity tariff, that's right, reignited conversations around the government's concern for the economic stability and the reality of many Nigerians today. We will also review what steps the government should take in 2021 to put the economy on a prosperous path for all citizens. How well can a 13.5 trillion naira budget, how well can it be managed to turn around Nigeria's fortunes, economic fortunes, that is? Of course, all of that, my guest will be looking at when we return from this short break. Stay with us.
Did you know that AIT's social media handles have all changed? If you are one of the millions of our followers on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, this is introducing to you AIT's new official and rebranded social media handles. Like or follow us now on our Facebook page, Official AIT Live. If you're on Twitter, switch to our new handle at Official AIT Live and activate the notification button to get breaking news and updates on the go. For exclusive short videos and photo news, follow our Instagram account at Official AIT Live. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Official AIT Live, and enjoy live streaming of news and your favorite programs, where you can also watch our broadcast materials at your own convenience. Note that Official AIT Live is the only authentic social media profile name with all the handles on our website ait.live, with a notification prompt to accept and receive breaking news and updates on the go. Log on to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube platforms on your smartphone, tablet device, laptop, and desktop to follow us now. AIT.live. On air, online, online.
Is a distinguished guest, Professor Kpakol. Professor Magnus Kpakol, of course, is a well-known name in Nigeria, Executive Chairman, Economic Growth and Development Center, former Chief Economic Advisor to the President, and Chief Executive Officer of the National Planning Commission. Professor Kpakol is a former Professor of Economics at the University of Dallas in Texas, USA. He is also, of course, a host of Magnus Kpakol GVA on AIT. So you see why I say he's a distinguished guest. Thank you so much, Prof, for finding time to join us.
You are wonderful. I have to come every day so you can introduce me. You're wonderful. Thank you very much. You have a wonderful show. And it's always a pleasure and great honor to be with you on your show. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Yes.
Welcome. Right. So here we are in 2021, after what many describe as the worst year in human memory in terms of the health calamity that befell the world. As of today, we're talking of millions of people who have fallen into the coronavirus. We're talking of millions more who are infected, and almost every country on earth is affected one way or the other. Economies have suffered so much.
Absolutely.
Now, so what does 2021 look like with this baggage that we carried over from 2020?
Well, thank you very much. I think that 2021, when we look at it, that the outlook seems pretty bright. Obviously, better be brighter than 2020. First of all, we've got the vaccines that have come. As you've said, 2020 certainly was a very difficult year for everybody throughout the world, and especially for families that suffered losses in terms of lives. You can't. They suffered irreparable losses, and so it was extremely difficult for families like that, and for nations. You saw nations where the GDP situation became extremely poor across the world. There was no nation that was exempted. Even the great and mighty China, that had always been resilient, suffered strong declines in their GDP. In Nigeria, of course, we've seen we're in recession. We've got 2 consecutive quarters, second quarter and third quarter of last year, of negative growth, about a little over 6% in the second quarter, and a little over 3.5% in the third quarter. And I think that the problem still persists going forward. The question is, when remedies come, when these things go away, there's something economists call economic hysteresis. So the thing that caused the problem has gone, but the effects of the problem are still there. So the question is, how do we take care of this so-called economic hysteresis that would certainly happen? You can come out of a recession and still have unemployment lagging, staying pretty high for a long time. So we have to be able to do certain things in Nigeria. We have to get our house in order. I believe that the government is looking at that. You saw the situation I saw you showed in Ghana, where they had the mayhem in their parliament. Of course, we just saw the one in the United States.
We'll come back to all of that later.
And so you see, so people are, it seems to me, trying to position themselves in a way, nations are doing that in a way to be able to correct the problems, some of the problems that were caused last year, and of course hoping that COVID goes away. Because if COVID stays on, then we will continue to have those problems. The chief culprit for everybody last year was COVID, in the way it paralyzed the global economy, in fact, even the global political economy. And then for countries in Africa that are very open and exposed, they suffered because they are dependent on long supply chains. And so whatever happened in the Western world, the big powers affected us. If they couldn't produce, and therefore, especially in Nigeria, where we depend exclusively on the output of petroleum, so when they couldn't buy from us, then obviously we suffered. We had no other thing to go to. So that we have to rectify this, that. We can't completely rectify it right away, but we have to begin to put things in position. But I emphasize, as you mentioned, thank you for mentioning my show, I talk a lot about human capital development. I think that we have to invest in our people. It's the number one resource that we have. And if we're going to be able to be competitive, then human capital development is critical. We don't do much research and development in Nigeria or in Africa. We have to begin to do that. And we maybe, with time permitting, we can talk about some of the areas where we can do that and hopefully begin to see results, starting right away. But this is still going to be a difficult year because of the after effect of what has happened. But I believe that there will be a rise in oil prices, at least in the immediate term, because of thirst. Because people are famished of a lack of production and then other things across the world. And as they come out, there will be increased demand. And with the increased demand, will demand our oil, and the prices should be somewhere better than $50 a barrel, in my opinion. Now, but down the road, I think we will have issues because you've got a President Biden coming in that is very pro-climate change and against fossil fuels and their emissions. So that's going to put a damper on our economic situation as we rely on crude oil production. But I think in the immediate term, we will see a good rebound in oil prices. Nigeria behaves the way oil behaves. If we're able to sell our oil, we're going to be okay. Our foreign reserves will be okay. Exchange rate will be stable. So I think in the immediate term, coming into this year, we should see improvements in that regard. It's just that, again, in our own country, we're thirsty. we're a growing country, we're an ingenious people, and so there's increased demand. So whether the supply of foreign reserves, not from foreign reserves, can meet the demand, the great demand that will come from inside, I don't know. And also with the start of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is started already in theory, so how competitive can we be in production? So if we just become people that are demanding, because all the countries of Africa are looking at the largest market, well, the biggest economy on the continent, not just in terms of GDP size, but in terms of consumer spending. So everybody is salivating for the Nigerian market. And suppose we just become people demanding goods and services, then we'll be placing a lot of pressure on the exchange rate, and so that's an issue. So we have to be able to produce goods and services that we can sell to the rest of the world. Otherwise, we just become people that are merely consuming
another market.
Yes,
you have thrown so much on the table, Prof, that I'm beginning to find it difficult to pick one at a time. But let me begin with a question that have been asked over time. You recall the coronavirus emerged in China in December of 2019. And throughout 2020, the world economy, and especially the Nigerian economy, was on tenterhooks. And then towards the end of 2020, there comes the second wave with the new strain of the coronavirus that's beginning to ravage the world, and we are seeing many more economies beginning to lock down all over again. In fact, in some cases, they are saying more severe than the first wave in 2020. Yes. Now, if this persists, say, for the first or second, up to the second quarter of 2021, what would that mean for the global economy, and particularly so for the Nigerian economy?
Yeah, that obviously that would mean a lot of economic turmoil for us. But I think that with the vaccines being rolled out, and also if people just wear their mask and they wash their hands. I mean, the good thing with this virus, with this problem, is that there are some things you can do. I mean, that we have had, in history, cases where people were completely defenseless. They didn't even know what to do. But I think that if everybody just wears the mask, President Biden wants to start a 100-day program where, starting from January 20, he wants to plead with people to wear their masks. The question is whether people will do it or not. But in Nigeria, I know that there are some people who think it is a scam. They've told me to their face that it's a scam, that is not true.
I hear that every day.
Yes. So, and I, in a sense, I understand where they're coming from, because they haven't seen people write about them that are dead or dying, because about 75%, over 75% of the Nigerian population is under the age of 35. So those people under 35 don't seem to die that much from the virus. And a lot of our people are out in the sun, quite a lot, getting their vitamin D. So I think that when those young people get it, they're the guys that are really active out there. It becomes, when they go to the chemist, the pharmacy, they tell them they've got typhoid and malaria. And when they treat them for typhoid and malaria, it seems to go away. But it's because they have resilience, and they can withstand it. But you can't keep testing that, because we have seen that even for these younger people, there are some people, that are really suffering and dying from this. We have the numbers that have been reported by NCTC every day. So the numbers are there, and we know people, that have died from this. So it's a real thing. And
the new NCTC figures seem to indicate that more of the new figures are people between the ages of 25 and 50.
Absolutely.
So it's not just people's ailment or disease anymore.
Yeah. The problem is that when they get it, they seem to not die. So they take medicine for typhoid and malaria, and they think that that's what it is. But they infect other people that are not going to be so lucky, and those people suffer grave consequences. So I think that the message should be that everybody should wear their mask and have the physical distance that we're asked to have, and we should be okay with the rolling of the vaccines. And I'm very happy that the president and the the top government officials say that they want to take it publicly. I would like to use the occasion to suggest to them that they should do it so that other people are taking it at the same time. So that you don't have people say, oh, it's just top officials that are being protected. So I imagine they would do that. That as their thing should just be a matter of demonstration. So as other people are taking it, maybe older people in society that are a little bit more vulnerable, then the government officials are also taking it. So I think it should be concurrent. Yeah.
All right. Let's look at another issue that you threw up, which is our economy, the Nigerian economy, that is very dependent on oil revenue. Yeah. Of course, when COVID came along, the volatility of the oil market, the international oil market, also threw up a number of challenges. The prices dropped, and in fact, at a stage, the Nigerian government had to recalibrate its budget for 2020, brought down the benchmark from the 55 naira per barrel to something close to $20–25 and all of that.
You're right.
Now, with a Biden administration that is they're expectedly going to be more environment friendly, coming on board, what are the expectations for the oil industry? And especially in relationship to Nigeria and its revenue, since oil is our mainstay?
I think that we have to, what I always suggest to people is that you got to take what I often describe as a dominant strategy approach. So you take a strategy where it doesn't matter what the other guy does, you're okay. And that strategy just means that we produce other goods and services outside of oil. And I think we have the capacity to do it. If we make it so that we tell every Nigerian just go out there and produce, and produce, and produce, and produce, and produce. What are the strong sectors we have? Agriculture is a pretty big sector in Nigeria. We can produce a lot of agricultural products. And if you look at our economic geography, you look at this, if you look at where we produce things across the country, you see, for example, we got a lot of animal production in, say, Katsina, the northern parts of the country. But I think that the southern parts of the country can also participate in that business. So we have to look at this so-called economic geography and manage it in such a way that if you're River State, if you're Lagos, if you're Bayelsa, you can do meat packing in partnership with Katsina. So let's say some states feel like they have certain advantages that can be employed. So we will create these partnerships. We've got to have strong partnerships. I say often that I'm not sure that Nigeria or Africa can succeed without global partnerships, honestly speaking, in terms of being really globally competitive. And if you look at some of the other countries that got there quickly, like if we take like South Korea, it was through global partnerships. Even China, that may pretend to be doing things by itself, they've got a lot of partnerships with Europe and the United States. So I think that we need these global partnerships, and we need local partnerships. So I just mentioned, say, Katsina in doing meat packing. We are getting meat now from South Africa. If you go to ShopRite, a meat pack that comes from South Africa. I mean, so we can do the same thing and supply under the Africa Continental Free Trade area to other parts of Africa too. We have advantages there. So we need to begin to look at ways that we can protect the Naira, stabilize the Naira, and produce goods and services and create jobs. Because otherwise, as you said, if you have a Biden administration that's doing what it has to do for its own country, and they go against fossil fuels and discourage it, and you begin to have electric cars and all this kind of stuff, then over time there won't be much demand for our primary export. And that obviously can have deleterious effects. So we have to begin to take countermeasures. And I think a good, strong countermeasure is to develop other sectors. And we can. I mean, it shouldn't really take long, to begin to produce. I go to the stores and I see how well we're doing in food manufacturing. I mean, you see like all these yogurts and juices and stuff that didn't used to be there. I mean, if you go and compare, let's say, a Chivita, juice product, at the price of 440 naira versus a series coming from South Africa, 1,000 something. I buy the Chivita, I just did so. so I buy the Nigerian product, and I think other Nigerians would do the same thing. And it's as good, if not better, than the ones that are produced in Nigeria. So I think that we just have to come back to production. Every state governor, we tend to lump everything at the foot of the president. I mean, so the president, we can't continue to run this very centralized type of government. We've got to decentralize greatly, very, very greatly, severely. So the states must focus on what are we producing for exports, not just what are we producing. Every state should, in fact, every local government. In my organization, we're trying to look to work with local governments in this regard. What can you produce and how can you produce and how can we build these partnerships? So we want to help to create partnerships locally across West Africa, but certainly with the advanced economies. The fourth industrial revolution has come. And if you cannot compete in this new revolution with digital, in the sort of this new digital world, even into the human biology and stuff like that. So if you can't compete there, you will soon be really experiencing a lot of poverty in your country because you won't be able to have the goods that you can sell. I think also another area is, say, with technology. If you look at the data, ICT in Nigeria has been growing in its share of GDP. So it is the second largest component of GDP now after agriculture. So I would like to see the share of agriculture decline. That is because we're expanding production, not because the volume of agricultural output is going down. I don't want the volume to go down, but I want the share to go down because we're expanding production in other sectors of the economy, like, say, ICT. Our young guys are very inclined to computers and to ICT. I think the government at the local government level, not even just federal. Federal obviously should give catalytic support to state and local governments, but we should round up our people, begin to teach coding to our young kids that are coming up, young kids in elementary school, should begin because that's the future. You got to be able to compete in that area, in high school, and then people who have graduated from universities. Some of our guys are doing what they call it, graphics designing, all these different. They can do them for people outside in New York, much cheaper than the guys in New York are doing. So we need to create these hubs in our local governments because our young guys don't have access to the internet, and it's extremely expensive. And now, as you just mentioned, the price of electricity is much higher, so they can't even run if they even had access to electricity. So we need, these are areas where we need support from local governments, state governments, and federal government to try to get our guys to be competitive. I think that they can. The ingenuity is there. So we need to provide training to boost their human capital in these areas, and human capital not just only in terms of skills to produce, but in terms of how to understand the world. If you can't form relationships outside and then have partnerships, it's going to be pretty difficult.
Yeah, of course, we just talked about the diversification of the economy. It has been on the table.
Yeah.
It's been on every government agenda, administration after administration.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, we do not seem to see exactly what each administration has done with the diversification process. And we're talking about the resorts to technology and other areas of the economy. In 2021, because by 2022, I'm sure that every focus in Nigeria will be on who gets elected in 2023. Yeah. But in 2021, which is a very critical year, what exactly do you expect governments at every level to do in pursuit of this diversification?
Yes, that's a very good question. That's the point is, at every level, especially at the local government level, that is the most important level, and that's the level that is relegated, to the background. and should not be, that we need to give tremendous empowerment, to our local government chairman. Something that I've also suggested is that we create what I call, and we talked about this, a local government development corporation. So that outside of the political local government, where you have a chairman running the political affairs and policy affairs of the local government, you have a business part of the local government that is a company. And they are producing, so it should be based on producing stuff. From rubber, we can make the plastic, the cases for phones. So we check the new iPhone that is coming, the Samsung, and we go make if you can't make the iPhone itself or make a phone, you can make the cases, and our guys can do that. And you begin to train people to do outsourcing. So, the Philippines, India, they're doing billions of dollars in outsourcing activity. We are not. Even to take advantage of the African Continental Growth, the African Growth Opportunity Act of the United States, we are not taking advantage of it. So we need to prepare our people to engage the world. That's the point. And it should happen it should be implemented. So the local government chairman and the people in the local government should come together. Nigerians are very smart and very bright. There are a lot of people. Sometimes we undermine and relegate to the background our people that have retired from either the private sector or the public sector. There are some old perm secs that are out there in the villages that are retired that can contribute quite a bit from the wealth of experience that they had from before. There are retired oil workers and people that are sitting in villages, sitting around. People are not using them. These guys have a great amount of experience and exposure that they can impart to the young guys coming up. We don't use them. So I'm using this through you, thank you, for the opportunity to tell local government chairmen and states that we need to use these guys. When you talk about human capital, it is the stock of knowledge, and of wellness and of the behavior that you use to produce economic value at a high rate of productivity. So human capital is the stock of knowledge. So knowledge consists of education and experience. So let's go get the experience of these guys that are out there and just sitting and use them. So I'm saying, you ask, what can we do? Well, that's what we can do, is to have these guys to begin to advise, because some of them are exposed, they've traveled around the world, they've been to places, and they know what needs to be done. They're retired now, but they still have, nobody took the things from their head. They still know it. And you can do this in the villages. You can sit in a village and literally work for somebody anywhere in the world. And I suspect that I was telling somebody the other day, time is coming, and this is not a joke, this is real life stuff, in the fourth industrial revolution idea, that you can have a house boy, call him that is in a village in Nigeria, is working for somebody in New York, because they have smart homes. And so he sits here and he programs something, and a vacuum cleans a house in New York, and he turns on the light, and he does whatever, he makes coffee and tea and whatever, and the reason they use him because it's cheaper than his equivalent and his counterpart in New York. So I'm just saying we need to train our guys. I use that very exaggerated example, just to bring the point home that there's a lot that we can do.
All right, let's take a short break. Professor Magnus Kpakol is our guest, a very distinguished economist, a distinguished Nigerian at that. When we return, we'll be looking at the predictions by the IMF of the growth indices for 2021 and what the Lagos Chamber of Commerce is also saying about the possible growth rate for 2021 and whether these two have any correlation. Stay with us.
The Nigeria we need is the united, indissoluble, and cohesive Nigeria, which guarantees equity, fairness, justice, and prosperity for its citizens. That is our focus on people, politics, and power. It is fresh, insightful, impactful. It's a must-watch. People, politics, and power on AIT.
All right, thank you so much for staying with us, people, politics, and power. Well, Prof, last year the IMF predicted that the Nigerian economy would contract by 3.4%. That was in 2020, the year of the pandemic, as it were, and that it will rebound with about 2.4% in 2021. Now, the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, however, projects a 1% growth for 2021. Which of these is...
So cut split the difference.
Yes, about 1.4% difference.
Yeah.
Which of these looks more feasible, more likely to happen?
Well, I think it depends on what happens with oil, but I would go towards the 2% range. The reason is because of the sharp decline in 20. So when you take a little growth and compare with a deep recession, you tend to get something larger. So we may grow, we could even do better than the 2% in 2021 as a whole, if the oil prices stay as they are and begin to rise, because I think we can do that. Otherwise, I was going to say, okay, split the difference, and then you let's take the average. Yeah, but no, I think that I would go more with the IMF forecast, and probably even better. I think that we could do better than something between 2 and 3% in 2021, because you're going against a very shallow performance in 2020. But so that's really not what bothers me. What I try to look at is not so much the GDP percent growth rate, especially when it does not even cover the population growth rate. So it doesn't really mean much. I mean, that's not what is important. What is important is we begin to see signs that we can produce goods and services. So signs are coming, and they see sectors that are improving and sectors that are becoming more and more competitive. Because then that tells me that if we get to 2.5%, 3% this year, then the next year we may get 5%, then the next year we may get 6%. So you want some sort of a momentum, that is growing in the economy. Most people won't even feel the difference if you grow 2%, or you grow 3.2%. You got to grow very significantly. So when I see growth rates near 10%, or 7.5%, let's just say, then people start to feel that something is happening. If you have a pay raise of 1%, 2%, you're not going to feel it. Right. So that is the same thing with the GDP. So, and then when we're talking GDP, we're talking a very gross type of data. So, so I think that what we want is, that's why I really am big on human capital investments and on preparing our people to be more globally competitive. We have to teach them. It's a matter of people getting consultants, getting teachers, getting retired people, whatever, to teach our people. You got to teach the countries that are doing well. If you go to Singapore, you take a taxi in Singapore, the taxi driver can give you a history of Singapore. And I asked them, how do you know this thing? He said, because they go to classes, because they every month or so, they invite them and they teach them. Well, do we teach our taxi drivers those kind of things? I mean, and we can do it. So they're not talking taxi drivers now, let alone other, technical type people. They're exposed to great knowledge. Research and development is something we don't do. Our universities, our students should be taught very properly how to do research and development, how to write, because after you do the research, you have to write the report, how to deliver it, how to speak and talk to people, and they have to read. Our kids have to be encouraged to read a lot. The guys who are very successful out there in the world are reading all the time, and then they have to have career plans. So nobody's really helping them in a very systematic way.
Unfortunately, the university system is in crisis.
Yeah, well,
for a university system that's been closed for almost a
long time. Yeah, so it's a problem. So
where does all that knowledge come from?
Well, so when they come back, they have to do this. They have to, if they were doing it, they have to do more. So you cover these basic areas of research and development, of communication, that is, of reading, writing, and reporting, and then career development. So what problems can you solve when you come out of school? It's not what do you want to become when you come out of school. Well, what problems are you coming out to solve? What value are you going to provide to society? The world has changed. It's no longer that time when you say, I want to be a doctor. I want to, so that you can do what? That's not what we want to have answered. So we got to get our people to do that. But I also think that the time has come for our administrations at whatever levels to begin to clarify and define their economic philosophies, or ideologies. So I want to know what the ideology of this government, of the federal government, is. And if you're a state, what is your ideology? And if we just say we're APC or we're PDP, and you and I know, we don't really know the difference between APC and PDP. It's just a matter of personalities. One time that same guy is in APC, whereby next week he's in PDP, and then he might come back to APC. You don't really understand what they're doing. So we need to, the reason I say this is because the investors that are coming want to know it. I'm not just saying this for the sake of talking. I'm saying that if I'm an investor coming in, I want to know, how do you feel about interest rates? Suppose I'm a company, and I'm a microfinance company, and I want to bring a business into Nigeria. Do you have a thing where you distort the market? Are you market oriented? Do you allow me to give out my funds, and whoever can have a business that allows them to cover the interest rate that I'm charging takes loans from me? Because at the end of the day, what really matters to a lot of people who come for money is the money they get, is the funding, more so than the interest rate. They will look at the business and say, hey, I think I can cover that interest rate. Okay, I'm going to take 1,000 naira loan from this guy, and he wants me to pay 1,050 naira. Pretty high interest rate if you do the calculation. But in terms of talking substantively, it's not that bad. The guy figures he can cover it, so he takes it. It allows him to continue doing his business. Because the problem is that there are challenges that people face, and the challenge of lack of access to capital is critical. We say, go and produce. Well, you need money to set up your shop to produce. And then you need markets to sell your stuff. Then you need training and information to prepare. So I'm just saying that we are at a stage where the private sector is fragile. The government, honestly speaking, is the big player in the economy. So unfortunately, the government has to be a little bit more involved perhaps than they are in the production of goods and services. What I mean, I'm not saying they should set up shops, but they should look at it a little bit more closely and see, hey, we need to go find funding from outside. We don't have enough funding for loans. But you can't do that if the people don't understand what your ideologies are. Will you distort the market on me? What's your position for exchange rate? Will I be able to take my money back? You know, they want to be sure where you stand on that matter.
Well, which is why some people are saying, look, governments need to do what they call policy overhaul, yes, so that we exactly know where the policies point.
Absolutely.
And not just stringing figures together and producing budgets of 13 trillion naira, more for a year, and at the end of the day, they do not add up, as it were, because the policies are not streamlined.
People don't understand your ideology. We don't know where you stand. Okay, if you take the United States situation now, you know that Biden is going to be a little bit more centrist. Away from, he's not as liberal as some of his colleagues in the Democratic Party, but obviously he's not extreme on conservative side the way Trump was. So people know. So the market is weighing that now, trying to see. So I'm saying in our country too, we are exposed to the whole world. So the playing field is the whole world. It's not just Lagos and Abuja. So or Port Harcourt, Kaduna, Kano, probably Ibadan, places like that. So is the whole world. So investors are coming. You want to be able to attract investors, not just the guys who go to the stock market, the portfolio investors with their bags. You want people that come that can have brick and mortar facilities that stay with you. If a guy is going to build something, he wants to be sure what's going to happen here. And he wants to be sure that after this 40 years that you have, or 8 years potentially, they're going to keep that same kind of arrangement. We need to be able to communicate this, to investors around the world. And as you attract, and I think we also need to go out and go look for investors and bring them and visibly show them these are the guys that we are brought. And I think what I'm saying is not just for the federal government. I think that the local government should go out and do that. I understand that the Julius Berger, when they came to Nigeria, they were a small company. But today in Nigeria, they are giants. So you can go out and bring small companies that also become giants. And you too can invest outside. I've been telling people, why can't Nigeria invest outside and bring dollars back home? I mean, it's, in a way, that's what our diaspora remittances represent. It's those guys who invested themselves outside and they're remitting back home. So imagine if we had businesses also outside. We can, through partnerships, we can have it. and we also bring foreign exchange back home. So there are all this number of things that we can do. We shouldn't just say it and then that we have to, because okay, in our local government, how many people have done this? And then we literally go out and recruit people. It looks like you can do in your carpentry shop. What is your problem? Why can't you do it just like the one from Italy? Otherwise, you see people go to Italy and they buy the same thing that our guys can make here. Oftentimes, the reason because they don't have the equipment or they don't have light. So we can do those kind of things.
Yeah, Prof. So let's take a few minutes and look at the events of the last 2 days in the United States and what you consider. I mean, given your experience, having lived, worked, and spent a number of years in the United States, you must be familiar with the social, the political, and the economic system of the U.S. What lessons do you think that as a developing country we could learn from the events of the last 2 days? Now, because, I mean, this question has become necessary because many people have been saying, well, this is the United States of America, the bastion of democracy. And we're seeing all of this happen. If this were happening in any third world country of the world, or indeed in Africa, the words that would be used in describing what has happened will not be complimentary at all.
Yeah, very, very good question here. I think that what has happened over this, actually since the election in November, have been, these things that have happened have been very instructive. But I think there could be a misunderstanding on the part of developing countries. And that misunderstanding is, as you said, they would say, oh, look, this is happening in America. But what has happened in America underscores the strength of democracy in the United States. Because you see, anything can have countervailing forces against it. It's how you survive it. It's how you overcome the thing that shows how strong you are. I mean, I don't know how strong you are until you are in a fight. So, I mean, you can't just say I'm strong, but when I see somebody come and fight you and you defeat him, then I know that you're strong. I mean, that's what has happened here. So the democracy came under challenge in the United States, and it prevailed. And we have seen, and I begin to show you how it did. And I was very proud to see how it prevailed in the United States. I mean, I watched everything. I was extremely proud of the United States, you know, and how it worked out. Of course, I'm usually proud of the United States. Let me just say, people may know that. But in this particular case, I was really extremely proud, in the sense that President Trump had appointed Supreme Court justices, believing that, personally, that if this came to a showdown, they would just vote for him. They did not. The system, the institution worked. They rejected him. He was rebuffed. He then hoped that the Congress would overturn the election somehow. They did not. He hoped on the, still Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, that he would somehow influence and change things for him. He did not. Then he hoped on Mike Pence, the Vice President, that somehow he would do something. He did not. It shows that no one individual can defeat the system or own the system, put the system in his pocket, but you can try. So that's in any system, your ability to overcome the challenge is what shows how solid you are. So I think that this has shown that the United States remains a very strong democracy. And it overcame a problem, and on the 20th, Joe Biden will be sworn in as president, and things will move the same way. But it is an open society where people are free to do, not as free as going into the chambers. Yes. I'd never seen that before. That was a complete breakdown, and how that happened mesmerizes everybody. I mean, there were barriers that could have prevented them from going so far, and somehow those barriers were breached. It's kind of surprising, but I think the lessons for us in Africa is to see that the institution worked. The institution stood up. The democracy as an institution stood up, and Congress stood up, and the judiciary stood up. So you got 3 equal branches of government, and nobody pocketed the other, even when they attempted to do so. So if we can do that in Nigeria, since we have pretty much copied the United States system, and I'm also very proud of the Nigerian system, and I think that, you know, we're a developing country. Sometimes we make mistakes, but I think that overall, as I say, I'm really also very proud of what we've been able to achieve in Nigeria, you know, since the start of democracy. We have not collapsed. The military has not taken over. So in a sense, we're building and nurturing it. And I think if we continue to do that, we saw even in Ghana, it did not collapse. So in Africa, so I'm just saying we should continue doing well. We should not say, oh, it happened, something wrong happened in the US. It was tested, but it failed. In Ghana, it was tested. They have a split, 137 parliamentarian representation, 137 from MPP, 137 from NDC. And so they have an even split there with just one independent. So obviously it was difficult to produce a speaker, but they've been able to produce
one now.
Yes. So again, they have survived. There's been a very strong democracy in Africa, in West Africa. So I'm very proud of the Ghanaians in what they have done. And so I think that when we see something that is good, we should commend it. We should not look for how it's bad, because there are going to be challenges. So that system was challenged. And I can understand that they wonder if the NDC won 37 more houses, more parliamentarian positions, how come their guy did not win the presidency? So that's, we understand. So they tested it. People, these are human beings, but at the end of the day, they're doing it. They may go to court, and I think
they're in court already, in fact. Yes.
Yeah.
So on a final note, Prof, give us your thoughts as to how you think Nigeria could actually move beyond the recession that we have right now. I think the fourth or so in very recent years, and make the best of the situation in 2021.
Yes, I think that it's about production. It's really about production. We need to produce goods and services. After what is a recession? Recession is a decline in the production of output. So that means we need to produce more. As a GDP is the final value of output over a given period of time, so usually a year. So that means let's produce goods and services. So how do we do it? We identify the areas where we can make that kind of contribution. And I've said that agriculture represents to me the number one area where we can go to have more. But you know, our peasant farmers are not giving much human capital investment. We can't continue to produce the same way that we were producing before and expect to be successful. And then they're terrorized on their farms by herdsmen, by bandits,
terrorists.
So people, it's even amazing that we have food to eat, you know, because these guys are terrorized, and we have to be able to stop that. You can't even get investors come if they think that you have insecurity. I think this is critical. We have to look for ways to address that. Now, personally, I don't think that it is in firing the army chiefs. I don't think so. I think that that's not the solution. The solution is more in intelligence and more in building the economy. Sometimes I feel sorry for the members of the armed forces, because people, these terrorists, they mingle with society, and there's not like they're at a particular place. Well, there they are. Go and get them. So I think that our forces are strong. The Nigerian armed forces, I believe that they're strong enough to, and they're doing a pretty good job. But these people, it's a matter of intelligence. We got to use a lot of intelligence to locate these guys. We got to produce goods and services, but the intelligence is extremely important. That security issue is a serious problem for us. I don't think the solution is by going to shoot them down. Obviously, where you see them, you shoot them down. but we have to get our people. They won't have people to recruit. The lunch hour, I often say, it will not be long enough for somebody to go and kidnap somebody and come back if he has a good job. See, if I have a good job working somewhere and they're paying me well, I say, oh, let me, at my lunch, let me run down and kidnap somebody and come back. I won't be able to do that. So that's the thing. So let's provide there's the facility for producing goods and services to our people. And some of these things begin to decline. We use a lot of intelligence, we work with armed forces. But that's the thing. We have to do it. We have to, it's up to us. We have to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps in this connection and then begin to look for partnerships from outside. Partnerships, not somebody to do it for us, but where we are doing it together.
Thank you so much. Yeah. My guest, Professor Magnus Kpakol, a distinguished and renowned economist, Chairman, Economic Growth and Development Center, EGDC, former Chief Economic Advisor to the President and Chief Executive Officer of the National Planning Commission, and a former Professor of Economics at the University of Dallas in Texas, USA. Professor Kpakol is also the presenter and host of Magnus Kpakol GVA here on AIT. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much
for your time.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Just before we go, let's quickly tell you, I've got a regular face on the program, and a rights activist, Barrister Esther Uzoma, is no more. Uzoma, who was also the convener of the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room, died on Wednesday at a private hospital here in the Nigerian capital, Abuja. Well, let's dedicate this to her. She was indeed a regular face on this program.
It is time to insist and maintain the privacy of the voting process.
She was one of the most vocal voices in the civil society community, vivacious and cheerful. Esther was as animated about life as she was passionate about Nigeria.
Our concern is that our politics should not influence our justice.
Her passion got expression in civil society activism, where she made several policy interventions in the media and was a regular on AIT's current affairs programs.
We must government is not coming. Government, no. Don't say we want to call on government. Government is not coming.
How do you mean? When you say government is not coming?
Shouldn't they have been here?
Her death came as a shock to many, friends, family, and associate troops to her law office at the Otako area of Abuja to pay their condolences.
May we never experience this type of calamity again. It's very devastating for the entire country, for womanhood. It's a great loss to us.
Esther Uzoma was a mother to the nation. She was a friend, she was a sister, she was a pathfinder. You know, there are no words to explain.
Some of her friends and relatives who spoke to AIT say her demise has created a vacuum.
Devastating. I lost my sister, a rare gem, a woman with great virtues. I can't just explain my feelings right this moment.
So I departed. It's a shocking news to the generation, and a memory will never be forgotten in anyone's life, because she fought for people that doesn't have hope.
A practicing lawyer, Esther Uzoma, hails from Isiala Ibano local government area of Imo State. Until her death, she was a vocal advocate of women's rights, using her proactive gender initiative, an organization she founded. Since 2020, Esther assumed chairmanship of the Civil Society Situation Room, Nigeria's foremost election think tank, made up of